Welcome to UX Banter Season 6, where we sit down with design leaders to hear their stories, insights, and what drives their passion for creating better user experiences. This season, we are exploring everything from designing with AI in mind to building trust, navigating industry shifts, and staying inspired in a fast moving field. This podcast is presented by Galaxy UX Studio and powered by Galaxy Publics, an Inc. 5000 company. And I'm your host, Dushyant Kanungo. Welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Dushyant Kanungo, with another episode of the UX Banter podcast in our season 6. Now, officially on the track, we are going to meet and talk to many guests of design leadership, who are flying the design leadership flag worldwide. So today, our guest, he's a pioneer in the field of UX research with over 3 decades of experience and more than 250 successful UX projects under his belt. His work has elevated product to industry leadership with standout successes like ProFlowers, FedEx Print Services, and the Pixie's Med Station. He's also the author of Disruptive Research and a passionate advocate for what he calls advanced UX, bringing a transformation approach to research and design. Please welcome Director of Research and Design at LSA Digital, Larry Marine.
All right, thanks. That was a great introduction. I appreciate that.
Thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So, as the first question goes, how was the journey for you? You said that you started off about 3 decades ago, but I think 96, 95 is the timeline that you are working in the digital and the computers. What is it like to, see your career then and now, all the changes that are upon us?
I actually started long before I went to college. I was in the Navy and I was a computer tech working on the latest equipment that the Navy. I watched people struggle with the technology, and it always, interested me. It says, why can all of these smart people have such a tough time with technology? And, that's when I started realizing there's something to the different psychology of users. And so when I got out of the Navy, I went to college, and I was very fortunate that I was in Don Norman's first class of cognitive scientists. And I had him as a professor for about a half a dozen classes,
Mhm.
and had other great professors as well. But I think people know who Don Norman is. And so he's the one that actually, when I graduated, I was thinking of going to graduate school, and he was the only program. And he said, we don't want any of our own graduates. We want to expand our knowledge base. So he said, because I had been in the world before as a computer tech, and I had a proclivity for this usability thing, this user-centered design, that I should, start a consulting company and start doing it. And so I did. So, and he helped me get my first couple of contracts. He introduced me to the people, and I took it from there.
And work at that time must be very different from the type of work which comes in our way.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like AI. When AI first started, anybody could do it, but now there's so many different specialties. And the same happened in the UX world. Back in the beginning, as a usability or user-centered design practitioner, you did it all. You did the research, you did the design, you did the testing, but now, for instance, I do research and strategy. I don't do any real design. I might design a wireframe, but I'm not going to do pixel perfect design, because each of the specialties within UX now requires so much domain knowledge, about that particular discipline, that it's really hard for someone to be a unicorn to do all of it really well.
So how is the workload that you're managing right now? Is it how different it is? And if you just put on the glasses and check the key differences that we can know.
There's a lot of strategic leadership that I do now, trying to organize some of our projects, to include UX with our LSA Digital is a digital transformation company. We do a lot of agile coaching, and we've got some incredibly talented agile coaches and enterprise architects and lean portfolio managers. And now it's how do you integrate UX with agile? And that's a really difficult question, and it really differs depending on how our clients are organized. But that's what I'm doing mostly now. Although I've got one project where I'm actually designing a prototype for a new product for the company.
And are these hands-on exercises still remain after so many years?
I didn't like the whole management track. I didn't want to manage people. That's not my forte. I am an individual contributor. I do hands-on. I actually get in there and do the research, do the analysis, do the task flow analysis, write up the user profiles. I still do all of that. And I really enjoy when I get a chance to work with a junior and I can help share some of my knowledge and practice with them and improve what they do.
And during all this period, did you move around the US a lot?
No, not really. I lived in San Diego for a long time and then moved here. I live right next to the Air Force Academy, which is where I used to work. So just here. And I found that here in Colorado, I'm in Colorado Springs near Denver. It was actually much easier for me because I had clients all over the country, and Denver is more centrally located, so it only took me maybe 3 hours to get to the most distant customer.
We just know in India, Denver, the last dinosaur, there used to be an animation was on TV. Um, so this is how we know. It was dubbed in Hindi, but it was the Dinosaur from Denver was the name of the show. But yeah, but the photos and everything we look around Denver looks beautiful. So while you're doing that, so your course that you did at college level, was it also here in Denver itself, or you moved to California or something?
No, I went to college in San Diego,
Okay.
University of California, San Diego,
Mhm.
which is one of the UC schools like Berkeley and UCLA, things like that. So that's where Don Norman was. And he was smart to live there because it's a very nice place to live, or at least it was, 35 years ago when I was there.
So in the journeys, you got the California in the 90s. Then you're working here. You're also part of the Air Force Academy where you actually do the Top Gun stuff. I mean, I don't know what you do there, but the exposure is different. The world is different. And it is safe to say that it is not your run-of-the-mill American citizen experience that you're drawn from there. There has to be drills and uh, you have to go through all those discipline and exercises. So when you combine them together, do you think that your life experience reflects to the design that you are presenting or the work that you're doing right now?
I think a big difference with me was, a lot of people are going into college now or into, boot camp type education programs, training programs, and they're really compressed. I was fortunate enough to get the basics, and because, when UX first started out, it was very simple relatively. And I was able to grow incrementally over a long period of time, which allowed me to practice and try things and try different things. And unfortunately, the training programs that we have now don't have that time built into it to allow students to try things. And that's actually why I wrote my book, because my book is a kind of captures all of the knowledge that I gained where I evolved the user-centered design practice. And so I wrote it for juniors who want to expand their practice, if you will. So it's not for somebody who doesn't know anything about UX because it doesn't teach the basics. You have to know something about it, and then you will evolve your practice by doing that. And it's much the same way that I evolved my practice, is trying different things, learning new things, facing new challenges. So it's my book is there to help.
Nice. So before we talk more details about your work, I have a few questions that I would like to know from you. So are you
Sure.
ready for the rapid fire?
Sure.
So are you a morning person or an evening person?
I'm a morning person, definitely.
No parties.
No
Okay.
parties. I'm a boring guy, a good dad.
So window seat or aisle seat?
I'll see. I
Okay.
have a bad leg and I need to stretch that leg out. And sometimes I need to use the aisle to stretch it out. So,
Your favorite holiday destination?
the mountains to go camping or skiing.
With much of a hiking involved?
With my leg, I can't do a lot of hiking. I can do skiing though. But yeah, I do like to hike it. And I live here in the Rocky Mountains, which is one of the biggest mountain ranges in the world. It's like the Alps and the Andes. And there's incredibly beautiful hikes up here. And I could be at the top of the world, literally, in about 15 minutes.
Okay. And any the sport that you play or have played?
Yeah, I played soccer. I played on a semi-pro team in San Diego, and I also raced bicycles. I was on a team in San Diego as well. So
Mhm.
I enjoy all of that, but I also play golf. Yeah.
I tried my hands once and don't think that I'm cut out to do that, but that's about it.
I don't think any of us are really cut out, not like Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy or anything. But I didn't have enough humility in my life, so I took up golf.
All right. So, keeping this aside and coming back to the core topics of your book, I think while we were discussing those pointers, you were talking about there are two things. One was about task analysis, and there was one more part that I am missing out completely. So, can you tell us what it was about?
So, one of the things you have to understand when people are using a product, there's a certain amount of base knowledge that they're going to have about that task that the product is there for. But there's also an amount of knowledge that they're not likely to have. And that defines the knowledge gap between what they know and what they need to know but won't. And really good design tries to address that knowledge gap or bridge that gap, if you will, by embedding knowledge that you have about the product into the design so that you're not relying on the user to know something that we know they're not likely to know. And so we design the user profile. Personas are far too vague. They don't really describe anything that will affect your design. Think about it. You probably spent weeks writing up personas, and then you just put them on a shelf and never used them again because what is it about a persona that actually influenced a design decision that you made? Whereas in a user knowledge profile, which is much more specific to the task and the product that they're trying to use, you can identify something that will direct your design decisions. Well, like, how are we going to help this user bridge that knowledge gap? What can we do with the design that does that? And so there's examples of that in the book.
Hmm. What would you think about the research data sets as or the research leaks that people are talking about? So we were talking to LinkedIn personnels, and then they came up and said that we have this research repo. Now we are applying LLM on top of it. So we have a database of about to 5,000 people that they interviewed about what works, what didn't work. I mean, the context has to be, defined clearly, but it was just about one project for over the years. So they can actually ask the AI to redefine that what were the things that people were complaining about and are still complaining about if you just chunk it out in a dates, phase, or manner. And now we'll have the list of items that we can perform operations on. And those results again can be documented and said that these are the benchmarks that we are going to make for this particular period. It sounds okay, but then come synthetic personas, because in the end, anybody want to see that where these things are going to be applied. So rather than creating new personas, now synthetic personas are fetched, and then driven research is written against it. Any thought on that?
Yeah, there's limited value to that. My problem with that approach that you described is you're relying on the users to self-report, and they are very poor at doing that. If you ask them what they like and don't like, they'll tell you what they like, but it has no real direct impact. It's an indirect assumption. There's no real direct impact or insight that you're going to gain from that. Because what a lot of times, if you watch people and then you talk to them, you ask them about how they do something that you just observed, what they will tell you is quite different from what you watched. So observations are far better than interviews. And so we don't have a way for AI to observe and report yet because they're not going to have the ability to understand the nuances, the decision-making processes, the nuances of behavior and things like that, why people did certain things, the biases that people have, and things like that. So the interview approach that you described might be helpful after you've developed a product, and you're going to get incremental insights out of it. But for the revolutionary insights, there's no way that would work. So you have to rely on observations.
Right. And there was this topic that, when we were announcing your arrival, the term that you use, the approach, advanced UX, and how does it differ from traditional UX methods?
Well, task analysis is probably a good example of advanced UX. When people do user research, they just write reports and try to, create a narrative of what their insights are. And task analysis, I've evolved over, the basic format that I learned from Don Norman's classes. It's now a much more specific approach to identify what knowledge is required to complete the task, what artifacts do people use or rely on, what issues or questions are there in the task flow, what is the real flow that people use, and then use that to optimize a best practice approach. So there's this thing called horizon of observation. It's where when you start observing people, you start to recognize patterns that people are following when they perform a task. And what you're going to learn is that if you watch 100 people do the same thing 100 different ways, your natural reaction is, oh, we've got to make this product, very flexible so 100 people can do it 100 different ways. But what you start to see is that there are patterns of behavior where some people are performing the task very well, like 5% are doing it very highly performant. And then there's a lot of people that are doing it fairly poorly. And so what you can do is extract that best practice approach from the people who are doing it well and design the product to fit that one way, that best practice approach. So instead of making it flexible, look at it and say, if 100 people are doing the same thing 100 different ways, it means nobody knows how to do it right. Let's design to guide the user to the right way of doing it.
But then again, it becomes a question, right? I mean, I am on a home page, and I know that there is a home link button, but certain standards as have been that I can simply click on the logo at any given point and go back to the home page. Or people who are not quite familiar with the navigation, when it drops down and goes to another section, they'd rather say scroll to the footer, and I'll have a large footer to, it acts as a sitemap, so I can just click anywhere and move from there. So these behaviors are often have been found in the people who have been very well versed with how they are dealing with technology. So doing
That's
this,
a good point.
yeah, but doing the same task, it is not removing the impact. The user is still able to navigate. But the idea in their head is that these two things are the three places where you can, go and do the navigation. But say if you are doing a search on Amazon, for example, how many times people would browse the navigation. The search becomes the prime nav finder because you're looking for a product, and nobody looks at any other place that, 20 something things that they were provided. You simply type the product name, you search, do the categorization, and do the navigation, which is coming in from breadcrumbs to go back and forth into categories. So I think perception wise, it is always going to be different. But if you say simplify it further, the navigation, I think, is just about the grouping, but end user, as common mind, 15-year-old nephew, he is going to use it by just typing the product. My 55-year-old cousin, he is going to just use the search. So navigation, who is the target audience for it, and why it is deep down designed like that? That it is there for the sake of it, that people can just buy in the order in which the UX is designed.
So what you're describing are the user interface design patterns, and I agree that those are helpful. A link is a clickable object, and everybody knows that. People, like you said, often know that you can click on the logo to go back to the homepage, but you'd be surprised how many people don't know that. But what I was thinking about was more the strategic task flow. So, for instance, I start the book out by describing the ProFlowers design problem. And it was an online florist, and they wanted to make sure that their website was different from everybody else's and performed better. And so when we did the analysis, we went out and actually watched people buy flowers in a flower shop. And most of the purchasers were men buying flowers for women, right?
Mm.
Or just men buying flowers. But what do men know about flowers? So a lot of the websites at the time had you build a bouquet. What do men know about flowers that would enable them to build an accurate bouquet?
Class go together.
Yeah. So what we understood was there was a knowledge gap there. The men that, were buying flowers, but they didn't know anything about flowers. And it turns out that men didn't really care about the flowers. They just needed a gift because they needed to apologize for forgetting their wife's birthday or their anniversary or something like that. So it wasn't the flowers that was important, it was the occasion. And they just wanted the right flowers for that occasion. So instead of organizing the website by virtue of the flower types, we organized it by occasion. So you'd select birthday and you'd see a bunch of bouquets that were appropriate as a birthday gift.
But it can also have the navigation that, are you late? Wow.
So, but the point is, the UX, the advanced UX was more strategic. It wasn't the tactical level of designing, the buttons and the links and the navigation. It was, the strategic direction became ProFlowers doesn't sell flowers, they sell occasions. Because it's not about the flower, it's about the occasion.
Right.
And so that had us reorganize how the website displayed all of the bouquets. Now, what was interesting is there were only about 30 different bouquets that you could get, but not all of them were appropriate for the right for each occasion. So, for instance, sympathy might have white roses or lilies in there, right? Well, there's only a couple of other occasions that might also have white roses, but you would still put them in there. And the users never knew. Because if they saw white roses as a graduation, that would be, or a wedding, that would be appropriate. But it's also appropriate for sympathy. So the users never knew that there were only about 30 bouquets. To them, it looked like there were hundreds of bouquets.
Hmm. So anybody who is listening in on our podcast, here's a book recommendation, which is Disrupting Research, which is written by Larry Marine. It is available on all major platforms worldwide. So you guys can directly Google search it or Amazon search it. You will get it right there for more in-depth analysis on the topic and the subject. Now, with that, the questions that always come to play a bigger role. You do spend so much time in your career, and you never thought about jumping to on the management side, or what kept you to be the hands-on consultant?
I actually earned my certificate in product management through the PDMA, Product Development Management Association. And that's when I realized I didn't really like management.
Mhm.
I'd rather use my knowledge and my skills to actually design something, or to do the research that would inform a design. And moreover, I really wanted to help people learn how to do a better job, because the education that they're getting now, because there is so much more to learn, isn't as good as it could be. And I think that's true with any discipline like marketing or software development. To be a good leader means to lead and help other people, improve their practice. And I found as a manager, I didn't have the time to do that. And I also didn't get the respect as a manager to be that type of leader, to be knowledgeable, because most managers lose that ability when they start managing. They stop evolving in the practice.
Last season, I spoke with Santosh RP. He runs his small practice out of London, and he has chosen to go to that path of doing just the consulting. And many companies have been offering him big numbers, but he chose to decline. I mean, he was one of the people who were working for New York Stock Exchange back in the day before the whole Satyam thing happened. And when he returned to India, he was like, I just want to do something big on those lines. And India wasn't ready for a UX studio at that time. So he went to UK, did his master's, and then started working with multiple agencies like that. And now he is very successful and he's running his own consultancy company out of London. So it feels like a very different career path. So the senior people who are now at the edge, where they either they have to upgrade themselves with AI and the tools and the Zen Alpha workforce that is coming in. So either they have to fight it off and make sure that they prove their mettle, or management. They are the only options which are seemingly plausible at the moment. Any advice you would like to give to them?
Well, I would like to just say to anybody, and I've learned this over the years, there's an old saying, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So find out what you really like to do and do it. And sometimes it's a struggle. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way you'd like it, but it's better than doing something you don't like.
And on the same ground, with that much experience comes responsibility of the community engagement and how you mentor to other people. You are a very active person in the local community and you deal with a lot of startups at the same time. So, what is the best way of engaging as a mentee if somebody wants to connect with you? What paths would that be?
Connect with me and message me on LinkedIn. That's the best way, because we could start the conversation there. And I've helped a lot of people on LinkedIn. I'm helping people now. And I encourage any junior UXer to not only reach out to me, but also to start becoming your own mentor and mentor some other people. And usually, even a junior UXer knows more than a product manager in a company. So you could offer services and mentor a product manager, and that helps you learn what you know even more. So, I think learning from a teacher is good, but being a teacher, you learn more than the students when you have to try to articulate your knowledge and present your knowledge in a useful, usable manner by the mentee.
Great. And so, any generic advice for people who are just starting out in these turbulent times?
Just involve yourself in the community. LinkedIn is really a great community. Yeah, I wish it could be better. Their algorithm sucks. But you are going to meet people in the UX community, and we have done a really good job of keeping it professional. If you disagree with somebody, that's okay. You're not going to get into a personal, battle with somebody because you disagree with them. And, people are really generous with their time and their knowledge on LinkedIn. I've learned a lot from it. And then one person I would definitely follow is Debbie Levitt. She has a podcast, and you could find her under Delta CX. That's her channel name.
Okay.
And she's a brilliant woman. Yeah, she's fun to listen to. She's humorous and she's very knowledgeable.
Repeat the name of the channel.
Delta CX, DELTA CX.
CX. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
Delta CX for Delta Customer Experience.
cool. Well, thank you very much with that. Any subject on topic book that you can recommend other than yours?
You know, there is a book called Task Analysis. It's by Ginny Reddish and Joanne Hackos, and I've referred that book time and time again. And I think it's a lot more detailed than what I've done, but it's a good fundamental basis for understanding task analysis. And then when you know, pair it up with my book, you'll gain a better understanding of what task analysis really does for you. So that's a good book. And I also like Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think. That's a fun book to read.
It is
And
always.
and of course, you know, you have to read Don't Make Me Think because it gives you the theoretical foundation for what good user-centered design is.
Yeah, I have the revisited version when they're all talking about mobile phones in it as well. And it actually changed a lot of perspectives of things that we've been working. But yeah, good examples and great way of understanding how the business works. But with that, I would like to thank you for joining our podcast today, Larry. And I hope that the communication and the conversation stay alive and we get to talk more.
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah, I'd be open to that. And I look forward to some of your viewers to actually get a hold of me on LinkedIn and ask me questions. I love talking about this stuff.
All right. With that, we are ending today's episode of the UX Panther podcast, season 6. Stay tuned. Please like, follow, and subscribe so that this conversation and the chain it actually stays on top. Until next week, see everyone. Have a good day.